Apple Music Essentials, Alan Jackson. Music's most influential artists and the stories behind their songs.
Okay, I'm gonna take you way back. I have a prop.
Hit me. Lord, you better prop me some glasses too.
You want me to prop you some glasses?
I don't have my reading
It
glasses.
says Douglas Corner.
Yeah.
And then it says Alan Jackson Tuesday Showcase. No cover.
Wow. Free.
Which I don't want you to have to hold on that, and I'll take it from you.
Okay,
But
yeah.
I just was like, do you remember, one, that would have run in the paper, right?
I guess.
Tuesday Alan Jackson Showcase, 6 p.m., no cover, Douglas Corner.
Wow.
So I just want to, like, for all my memory of you, you've been Alan Jackson, you know? But for people in that room that night, and maybe even for yourself, you were on the front end of the journey.
Oh, yeah.
And I just kind of want to hear about the music that you played. If you remember, I think that was the Tim Dubois Showcase, and what happened and what started happening out of that.
Well, first of all, I can't even remember all the showcases that I had done previous to that.
Okay.
And gotten turned down over and over from every label, some of them twice. I remember one woman at CBS told me I need to go back to Georgia. And I mean, seriously.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. And I was just hard-headed, I guess. But I think I'd been in and recorded like you do, you know, go and record a few demos trying to get somebody's attention. And I'd had a couple of other producers trying to help me. And, you know, nobody could let me or get me what I wanted to sound like. I want the type sound and the music that I wanted. And we would cut other people's songs mostly. And I had met Keith Stegall through the songwriting thing that I had. And eventually I talked him into cutting stuff, and he let me do my own material. And that's what led to that showcase. And so and he still laughs about my paper sack full of songs, you know, that I'd bring. And I'd bring it. He said the first 3 albums, you kept bringing that paper sack, and we used it up.
Cassettes are in the paper sack,
Yeah.
or lyrics?
No, cassettes.
Cassettes.
You know, just homemade demos that I did, and there'd be a lot of those went on to be #1 hits.
Yeah, they did.
That was funny.
What was it like to be working that much, and what was it like to be in the dream and it's happening and people are loving the music? I mean, take me to that early first 3-4 albums.
Oh, that was crazy. You know, the 90s were a lot different than now. I mean, we'd have 3 singles a year or sometimes more. So you could have 3 #1 records in a span of a year. And you're doing videos on everyone. I think I've done 50 or 60 videos, you know, in my career. And so you're just constantly rolling, you know, doing stuff like that. And plus you're touring, you know, 100, 150 shows or more a year, and you're gone all the time. But it's fun because it's all new. I hadn't been anywhere my whole life, you know, and so everywhere I went was exciting, and the first few years, and so all of it was exciting. And to have those crowds, you know, when you'd never had that. I mean, I played clubs where people just wouldn't even dance, and then when I took my break, they'd turn the jukebox on and dance, you know.
Makes you feel real good about yourself.
Yeah, so it's totally different, and you know, it's a lot to swallow too. It's hard to, you know, it's a big adjustment. You get all the attention and all that. It can be hard on you. And Denise and I just had a baby right when when Real World hit the top of the charts, and so it was hard on her, me being gone a lot, but you know, it was a whirlwind. It was a whirlwind.
So speaking of being out, you're writing even when you're out on the road. And so I've always heard this story about Chattahoochee, that Jim McBride brings you this idea. Is the idea a song called Chattahoochee, or is the idea like?
I can't remember, to be honest with you. Jim would probably remember. I think we just started with some crazy up-tempo thing. I kept telling him I wanted something up-tempo. It's so hard to write up-tempo stuff. It's not goofy. And we started, it just somehow headed in that direction. And I don't know where the Chattahoochee, I mean, I know where it came from because that's where I grew up down there on that river and that lake that it flowed into. But it just kind of started out as a fun thing for us to write, and even after we finished it, I thought, well, that'll never be, if it's on a record, it'll never be a single. Nobody else will care about or understand what a Chattahoochee is or care anything about it.
Because it's just quirky?
Well, because unless you grew up around Georgia, it's just, you wouldn't know what it was. They'd be like, I remember Waylon Jennings or something saying one time, what the hell's a Chattahoochee? It's like in the early days. So you just, I didn't think anybody would connect with it, but then I realized that, everybody's got some kind of Chattahoochee somewhere.
Yes.
And it's still to this day, it's that way. Yeah.
And the song is about so much more than a river.
It is about growing up, coming of age kind of thing.
Yes. Now, I've read that y'all played it out the night you finished it.
I can't
Is that a lie?
I don't know. Jim in the early days, Jim did come out and wrote some, and we wrote together out there for the first few years. So we may have finished it on the road. I don't remember. But I did play it live I didn't play, when you don't have that many hits, you can play stuff off your albums or whatever. I remember playing it live first time for a crowd and getting the response that you typically don't get for a song they've never heard.
That's when you know.
That's the first time I thought, well, people might like that thing, And the video was what really made it.
The video is still one of my favorite videos.
Oh, mine too. I love it.
A lot about living and a little about love.
I want to talk about the album Drive, and let's start with Where Were You When the World Stopped Turning. Here's where I'd like to go. In some ways, that song, we're immediately in the shadow of 9/11 and also the shadow of all the awards and the nominations. And I'd love to hear you talk about it as a songwriter, though. And what is it like to be woken up in the middle of the night with an idea that you have to put down?
That one just felt different. I just woke up and this whole chorus was there, and it pretty much ended up exactly the way it came in the middle of that night, and I just felt like it needed to be written down at that time. So I did. I went downstairs and wrote it and recorded that. I don't know how I recorded it back then. I think back then I used to carry a little digital recorder thing before the cell phones, and I recorded that chorus, and then I kept telling myself, I'm not going to try to write a song, because I just think it's just like you're trying to take advantage of a situation for your own good, and I didn't want to do that. And even after I wrote that, I didn't know what I was going to do with it. And then Denise heard it, and she said, you know what, people will want to hear that. And so I don't know, and I played it for Keith and my manager and label, but how you would do, and everybody said, I think you ought to record that, and so we did. And then then I sang it on the CMA Awards, I guess, first time I ever performed it live.
I remember that performance.
Where were you when the world stopped turning that September day?
That song is so tricky because it's painful to listen to. Is it painful for you to listen to ever?
First of all, I never thought it would be received the way it was. And then, and secondly, I thought it would go away as quick as it came, because it's about a tragic time. And now I see 20 years later, almost, that it has kind of grown into this more than what it was. It's still about 9/11, but it's about the whole story of hope and courage and all the things that go with
coming together.
Yes, and so now I see that people appreciate it for that, because I have fans out there that are so young they don't even hardly remember 9/11, but they love that song.
Tell me about. I'm thinking specifically of a song like Remember When, but also some of the other songs we talked about. Is it ever scary for you to be so personal in your lyric writing?
Yeah, I've always tried to write it where it is personal, but it's not, so that other people can feel like that that could be their life. Yeah, I don't know that I've probably written stuff that would translate that well, but yeah, I mean, you know, when my wife went through a tough time with cancer several years ago, and I wrote a song about that, and it was, you know, it was almost something to help me as much as her, and I didn't know if I wanted it to be on an album, but it was, and we wasn't a single or anything, but I just felt like it was. I tried to think that it might help other people that were going through something like that, you know. But and that was pretty personal, but it didn't bother me. But I don't know. I'd have to think back if I've written anything that I'm embarrassed about.
I think it's just vulnerable. It's vulnerable to tell the truth about your life in any setting, and it's really vulnerable to do that on the radio. So in 2017, you're inducted to the Hall of Fame, and I've watched your speech, and I love that speech. I love that acceptance speech. It's funny, it's warm and kind, but I've been thinking about what do you do when you've all the dreams, all the things on the bucket list you kind of tick off?
You just have fun.
Okay.